Once there was a man who had 2 sons. One day his youngest son came to him and said, "Father, I want my share of inheritance." And the father indeed gave him his share of inheritance. And the youngest son left the family, so left his father and the older brother, and left the land where they were living and moved on to a distant land, to a distant country, to start a new life. The youngest son wanted to have different type of life than he used to have with the father. So his life was life of, if you want, wild living. You could call it life of debauchery, drinks, loose women, and so on and so forth. He was wealthy because his father was wealthy, had money and properties and lands and stuff. So his share of inheritance was ample. As he lived like that for an indefinite period of time, we don't know, probably a few years, one day he ran out of all his money, so he spent it all. And at the same time, the country that he was living in experienced famine. So experienced famine, which means a very difficult situation. So he began to feel the pinch and realized he needed to work. So he hired himself out to a local inhabitant who was looking for somebody to feed his pigs. So the youngest son became a pig feeder, if you wanted to. Now, he was Jewish, you see, and with the Jews, they've always considered pigs as unclean animals. So to have this type of position, to have this type of work, was nothing short of humiliating. It's a great humiliation to a young Jew. And he fell very low indeed. And as he was feeding pigs, he also felt that he wanted some of the food that the pigs were getting because he was hungry, but he couldn't have any. And so one day, in that particular state that he was in, humiliated, wasted, lost, and so on and so forth, he came to his senses. He remembered his father, and he realized that even father's servants had plenty of food to eat and had a good life compared with what he had. He realized he needed to go back to the father. He needed to go back home and apologize to the father to start with, and to say to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you, and I don't deserve to be called your son anymore. Please give me a job as one of your hired men." So he decided to do that. He was utterly humiliated, and in that, humility comes, of course, and this is what he realized, and he decided to walk back home. This was the time way before planes and cars or anything like that, so he walked from that distant land all the way to his home. He was hungry and broken, but that's what he did. At home, the father was looking out of the house, probably looking out of the house every day to see if maybe one day his boy is going to come back home. And sure enough, on that particular day, he looked again through the window, and he saw in the distance a tottering figure of a man walking. And the father knew, he understood, he knew his flesh and blood, and he knew that was his boy, his youngest son, coming back home after all these years. He could have easily stayed at home and waited for his son to come and give him a lesson, very, very good lesson, look what you've done with your life, and you wasted your inheritance, and so on and so forth. And many fathers would probably do that. But he not only didn't do that, he actually ran out of the house, ran out to meet his son, and he hugged him and he kissed him. And the son, in all humility, said to the father, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you, and I don't deserve to be called your son anymore." And the father said to the servants, who'd probably run after him, thinking, where is he going now, running somewhere to the horizon sort of thing. He turned to the servant and said, "Quickly, put the best robe on my son, give him a ring on his finger, and give him new sandals for his feet. And then go and kill the fatted calf that we have, and let us start a big celebration. Bring the musicians, bring dancers, let us party, let us celebrate, because my son was dead, and now he's alive. He was lost, and now he's found." And so they went home, and the great celebrations began. So this is the first part of the story, that in our spiritual religious history is known as a parable, the return of the prodigal son by Jesus of Nazareth. And it's a great multi-layered parable that really has powerful teachings for anybody who is really willing to look at it and see what it's talking about. Parable is a Greek word, means comparison, and it's basically metaphorical analogy. Just for those of you who don't know, it's essentially a teaching story that teaches by metaphorical means. So today we will just focus on this part of the story, and in the next episode we'll look at the second part of the story that has to do with the oldest son. But to comment a bit on this story that you've just heard, we could sort of start from if you want, a little bit philosophically, sort of religious, spiritual life philosophy, if you want. And you could say that human beings, manhood, men, man is a kind of a project, It's sort of, we live in a certain type of tension. We're on a journey, and we're kind of unique in this creation as being those types of beings, because we have essentially left the Father. You could say that. Sort of, I'm talking here mythically, philosophically, in a kind of bigger way. So you may not be able to understand it immediately, depending how what your disposition is. But if you try to think about it that way, neither birds, nor trees, nor nature, no forest, fields and grass and all that, they have never left the Father, you see. They live with the Father today, they've lived with Him forever, and they will continue to live tomorrow. Father, in this story, metaphorically, being Christian God, you see, with God. So they have never left the Father. They've never rebelled, you see. Well, man is a singular being in this world who has the power, willingness to rebel, you see. And we rebel quite often in different ways. It depends how much of that we recognize in ourselves. But certainly in this story, the boy, the prodigal son, is you and I, you see. That's the point. It's you and I and all humanity on earth, and Christian God is the Father, you see. And through looking at the story, we will realize the vision of Christ, His fantastic, beautiful vision of life and of God and what it is, and why He taught us all of that. Because human beings rebel. It's one of the ways we turn away from the Father, you see. And so we rebel, we create our own trip, we go on our own journeys in life, We don't need the Father anymore. We don't need this, tradition. We don't need, our family and this and that, the other thing. We just want to go and do our own thing, which is different than what was given to us through our inheritance in this world, through the family that we came from, and so on and so forth. And so we go off and we start a journey. And on the journey looks great and very freeing to start with. And the Father allows us to do that. You see, Christian God is a very different God than a Muslim God, a Jewish God. They're much heavier gods. Here, you want to rebel, and the Father will allow you to do that. He will not stop you from that. He will allow you to do it, you see. He will even help you if you demand from it. He will help you to make the journey, like the youngest son did. I mean, to go to a father at that time in amongst the Jews 2,000 years ago, or as a matter of fact, anywhere in the Middle East or in Africa or any countries, and ask for your inheritance while the father is still alive. Basically, what you're saying to the Father, I want you to die. I don't care about you and your family at all. I wish you were dead. That's basically sort of what the message is. And to ask for the inheritance while the Father is still alive and in full power, it's nothing short of scandalous. Particularly for a boy who was supposed to inherit anyway part of Father's estate, but also continue and honor Father and honor his tradition and all of that. He's broken with all of that and said, I want the money and I want to bugger off. And the Father gave it to him straight away. He did not complain, neither did he reprimand the youngest son. He allowed him to go on this on his journey of sort of wild living and debauchery, which is what he did, you see. And a lot of people do that. And today, this day and age in particular, when all those things have been loosened up so much that that a lot of us can go and waste years on those types of paths of having a great time. For example, it's one form of rebellion, and rebellion is one form of leaving, a very common form of leaving the Father, you see. So we go off, like he did, and waste what was given to us as inheritance. And so until we completely waste it, you see. Once it's all wasted, we end up feeding pigs, or we end up feeling low, or depressed, or suicidal, or sad, and so on and so forth. I understand not everybody would have gone through that journey in life, and people rebel in different ways. This is one of them. I certainly can connect very much with the story of the youngest son, because I rebelled myself quite strongly. So, and you come to a point where all your rebellion, you realize, has brought you to a very low point. And in that low point, you come to your senses. Just like the youngest son came to his senses while he was feeding pigs. You see, doing the lowest of the lowest jobs, you see, an unthinkable situation, very humiliating. And you wake up, come to your senses, and realize, I need to go back. In humility, I need to apologize. I'm broken. I'm done. I've rebelled as far as I could, and now I need to go back and apologize to my Father, and live as his servant, his paid servant. And I don't even deserve to be called his son. This is a very big statement on the part of the youngest son, of the prodigal son. You see, prodigal son, wasteful son, who has wasted all his inheritance, wasted everything the Father has so generously given him. Even before his time, when he should have done so, he obeyed the youngest son and gave him the inheritance. So, a very powerful story, and certainly to the Jews at the time, shocking. At different points, really shocking. And today, it is also shocking, impactful as it was. But you see, there is something in us that wants to rebel. And we want to go on a journey away from everybody, everything, father, family, roots, tradition, and all that stuff, and go and create something of our own. And then we struggle in the world. We do things, we create this, we become that, and this and that, the other thing, But if it's a rebellion, ultimately, you come to a point realizing, this is futile. I made a big mistake. I've sinned. I have wasted, thinking that I'm having great time, but I actually wasted my Father's inheritance. And I need to go back in humility. And then, that's the moment of redemption and the moment of metanoia, when you change the direction 180 degrees and you walk straight back home. But without that, rebellion, it's very hard to be conscious. Because you see, birds never rebel, trees never rebel, nature never rebels. It can go through difficult weathers and difficult things, but never rebels. But we rebel. But through that rebellion, through our suffering and anguish of our rebellion, we become conscious, you see. So then we can go back in true humility, with our heart set straight completely, and meet the Father and apologize to Him. And you see, the thing about the Father in this story, but this is Christian God, you see. Christian God is looking out of His house. This is all metaphorical. Looking out to see when you and I are coming back. You see, prodigal sons, when are we coming back? He wants to have us back. He's eagerly waiting. And then when He sees us, He does the unthinkable. I mean, no respectful man in his sort of middle age or late age would run out of the house, to kiss and hug his son. But He does that. He's so keen. He's so loving. He's so generous. He's so kind. He just wants His son back. He never brought up the issue about the money, which in our merchant-driven society today, every father probably would. Where's the money that I've given you? You've spent it. What's going on? No. This father understands what's happened. He does not need a profit and loss account of how the money was spent and all of that stuff. He is at a much higher level than that. He loves His son, and all He cares about that His son comes back and they live together again. You see, it's a beautiful, gorgeous vision of life, gorgeous vision of God, you see, that He's not mathematical at all. Well, you've done this wrong, and you live debauched life and loose women and drugs and drinks and all that, now you're going to be paying for the next 20 years. You see, you're going to be paying. I mean, Eastern traditions often are mathematical, but you've acquired karma, you did all of this, so you're going to have to be paying back. This makes a lot of sense to a merchant mind, you see. But to a loving God, that's a world that he doesn't care about. It looks abhorrent to him. He looks for humility and softness in the heart. And he looks, if his son is truly humble, if he is defeated, truly defeated, that he's realized the mistake of his ways, how sinful he has been. And when he comes back with full humility and a soft heart, the father reinstates him straight back into where he once was in the family. And this is also religiously unheard of in the modern world. I know some of the Eastern philosophers, Indian philosophers who wrote about it. One of the great things about Christianity, one of the great achievements was forgiveness, immediate forgiveness if your humility is genuine, is available. You don't need to go through lifetimes of suffering again. So this is what the father does. He reinstates the boy straight back to the family. He gives him a robe, you see. He gives him a ring on his finger. The robe is, for the best of the best, for the best guests and best family members. And the ring is a sign of authority of the father and the family. You're back into your fold and with your family, with your roots. And also he gives him sandals for his feet. Because at that time, sandals could be worn only by people of status, if you want. Servants didn't have sandals, but he's got his sandals back too. So he reinstates his son straight back to where he once was. Never asks any questions, never goes into questions of money and this and that, the other thing. No. Let us party, let us celebrate, let us have a feast, let us sing, let us dance. And the whole creation in that house or town or whatever, everybody and everything will celebrate. Why? Because the son who was dead, you see, he was dead to the father, he's come back alive. He was lost, now he's found, you see. And this is, what in American South you will hear in the lyrics of the songs Amazing Grace, So if you listen to that, the first verse, I once was lost, but now I'm found, you see, which is how it is in life. You realize the mistakes of your ways, you realize your rebellion, you humble yourself and you walk back to the Father. But without you doing, rebelling and suffering and going through the hell of that sort of consequences of your decision, you can never become conscious, you see, because birds are not conscious, neither are trees, neither are fields. In a certain way, you can say that they are, but they're not really. They don't have that element which we do have as human beings, that you can actually become conscious and consciously return back to the Father, but now with understanding, you see, and you can stand next to Him as His honored, rightful Son. So it's a tremendous parable. It's a beautiful story that has touched many generations of our people, and it's still read every year in both Christian, Catholic, and Orthodox churches, and certainly probably in Protestant churches too. I'm not entirely certain about that. Why? Because it's got a tremendous impact on the soul of a person who hears it, if you understand what you're hearing, you see, if you can translate the story. So the prodigal son, it's you and I. And our God, Christian God, is the Father. It's a beautiful story. So I hope you enjoyed this first part of the parable, The Return of the Prodigal Son by Jesus of Nazareth. And the next episode we will be looking at the second part of the parable, which concerns the older brother and a different way of rebellion, different way that we can remove ourselves from the Father. Until then, many blessings and thank you.